My name is Harun Karcic. I'm a journalist with the Jazeera Balkans channel. Well, let's look at this way. Back in 1991 and 1992, what Harun Karcic and Ratko Mladic wanted to do was to establish an ethnically pure Serb mini-state inside Bosnia, which will eventually secede and join neighboring Serbia. This will fulfill their centuries-old idea of having a greater Serbia. Now, in order to do that, what the two of them wanted to do, along with their fellow conspirators, was to kill and ethnically and kick out, as we say today, ethnically cleanse all non-Serbs, meaning Muslims and to a small extent Croats. So what they managed to achieve during the 4-year war was to annihilate more than 90% of the Muslim population in the part of Bosnia which is known as the Republic of Srpska. So they managed to achieve their political and military objective. Now, as far as the ICTY verdict is concerned, receiving 40 years for killing more than 200,000 Bosnian Muslims and committing a genocide in eastern Bosnia in the town of Srebrenica, I think that is very low. I mean, you can never really adequately punish a person who has committed genocide. So I think justice has not been served. It will never be served. And this is a very small sort of satisfaction for the victims, for Bosnian Muslim victims who were killed during the war, and for the 20–30,000 Bosnian Muslim women who were raped, and for the more than 2 million Bosnian Muslim refugees. However, I do not believe that justice has or will be served by if you sentence somebody to 40 years in jail. I think what they wanted to achieve, they managed to achieve. I think now what is happening in Europe generally, the anti-Muslim wave sentiment is really playing into the hands of Serbs. And what is happening now is that Bosnian Serb politicians are turning more right-winged. Politicians from neighboring Serbia are becoming more right-winged. So I think we are now once again a small a minority with no allies in the region, and we need to be aware that a new war, perhaps even a new wave of atrocities, is possible in the near future. Well, look, it took the French and Germans about 50 years to come up with a mutually acceptable history textbook. The war in Bosnia ended less than 25 years ago. So if you speak to Bosnians today, including Bosnian Serbs, Bosnian Croats, and Bosniaks, which means Bosnian Muslims, you'll hear three completely different narratives of what happened back in the 1990s. Bosnian Muslims will say that they were the biggest victims of Serb and Croat atrocities. Bosnian Serbs will say that they acted in self-defense because Bosnian Muslims wanted to establish an Islamic state. And Bosnian Croats will have a similar story. So today the history is very much a divided thing here. It's very decentralized. So Bosnia being divided into two political entities. Bosnian Serbs have their own history textbooks, and the Muslim Bosnia Croat Federation has is divided into smaller cantons, like in Switzerland. Each canton has its own history textbooks. So we do not have a common history yet, and judging from the current political situation, I do not think we'll have it anytime soon. So it's a very divided narrative. It's a very different narrative, and they're essentially competing narratives. So, but of course, we can use the ICTY verdicts, the ICTY being the UN-backed International Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. What this court managed to do was to establish facts. And what facts tell us is that Bosnian Muslims were attacked by Bosnian Serb forces and by Bosnian Croat forces, along with support from neighboring Croatia and neighboring Serbia. Their aim was to annihilate the Bosnian Muslim population inside this country, and to eventually join and to eventually divide Bosnia into Serb and Croat parts, which will eventually join neighboring Serbia and neighboring Croatia, and they would thereby achieve their centuries-old aims of having a greater Croatia and a greater Serbia. So I believe you can use the ICTY verdicts as a starting point in coming up in drafting a jointly acceptable history textbook. Well, you see, Ali Izetbegovic had a very romantic vision of Bosnia. He dreamed of a country where all different religions and ethnicities would live side by side. However, I mean, I believe that early in 1982 he realized that such dream was impossible to create. The matter of the fact is that every European country, every nation in Europe has its own nation state, except for Switzerland, which is a case by itself. Of course, Belgium, but Belgium is being held together by the fact that Brussels is the headquarters of NATO and the headquarters of the European Union. And we know that their own regional allegiances and their ethnic divides are very strong. And we know that they have very serious political problems. We know that last year Belgium was not able to create a government for more than a year and a half. So when you look at the Balkans now, Bosnia and Macedonia are the two remaining countries where multi-ethnic countries, where different religions and ethnicities live side by side in some sort of shaky, uneasy peace. I believe that Ali Izetbegovic's vision of a Bosnia is no longer holds. The nationalism is so strong in this country, especially from the Serbian and Croatian side, that it seems now that the Bosnian Muslims are the only ones who are willing to live in a and work for a multi-ethnic state. We know very clearly from statements coming from Serbian and Croatian politicians that they do not want a multi-ethnic state. They want to have a state for and by themselves. There's a similar situation in Macedonia, where Albanians and Orthodox Christian Macedonians have been living side by side, but not together, but next to each other for the last couple of centuries. But we know that their nationalism has been growing in Macedonia as well, and that's quite a number of Albanian Macedonians who like to secede and join neighboring Kosovo and Albania. In the case of Bosnia, it's Bosnian Serbs would very much like to secede and join neighboring Serbia, and Bosnian Croats would like to secede and join neighboring Croatia. So I believe now that Ali Izetbegovic's dream of having a multi-ethnic Bosnia and Herzegovina is just a dream. There's nobody really willing to work for it anymore, and quite an increasing number of Bosnian Muslims themselves are realizing that this country itself, this attempt for Bosnia and Herzegovina to hold as a multi-ethnic, multi-religious state is increasingly difficult to run. It's difficult to hold, and it's always racked with political crises and with economic difficulties and so on and so forth. Well, you see, Islam came into the Balkans about 600 years ago. So when somebody tells you that Islam is not a part of Europe, that's absolutely wrong. Islam was Islam came to Europe through Andalusia and through Sicily and southern Italy. It came later on through the Balkans. However, Muslims from Andalusia were expelled in 1492. Somewhat earlier, they were expelled from southern Italy and from Sicily. So the only remaining Muslims in Europe currently are Muslims in the Balkans. If you exclude Muslims who have migrated from North Africa and Southeastern Asia towards Germany, Austria, England, and so on and so forth, or Muslims who came in the last wave of the refugee wave from the Middle East towards Europe. So I believe that the Muslim heritage, the Islamic heritage in the Balkans, is something that belongs to all Muslims around the world. We share the same faith, we pray to the same God, we turn towards the Kaaba every day, 5 times a day when we pray. So I believe that Muslims from Europe, if they want to see examples of real European Muslims, they'll have to come to Bosnia, because this is the last remaining Muslim majority state. And the bridge spanning from the Balkans towards the first Muslim majority country being Turkey. So I believe that there's a lot to see in Bosnia. There's a lot of culture and historical heritage. This is the only country where you can find blue-eyed Muslims living in Europe who have not converted to Islam, who have been living as Muslims for the last 500-600 years. Their life here is difficult. However, people are happy. People are happy that they're able to freely express their religion and pray openly without fear of being imprisoned. Bear in mind that 25 years ago, Bosnia was a communist country. Praying during communism was almost forbidden. So whoever attended the mosque, went to a mosque regularly, whoever fasted and was at the same time a public employee was scrutinized by the state security services. Today the situation is much different. Bosnian Muslims are economically stronger than ever before. Bosnian Muslims are more educated than ever before. Bosnian Muslims have been traveling the world and creating networks with fellow Muslims in Europe, in the UK, in Germany, in Austria, in Turkey, and in the Middle East. And I believe that this country really has a lot to offer. What we want to do now, we as Bosnian Muslims, would like to re-establish our lost contacts with fellow Muslims in Turkey, in the Middle East, in Europe, in England, and so on and so forth. So this is really a great opportunity for European Muslims to come and to rediscover Islam in the Balkans.